Welcome to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm Ali Maxwell, and it's time for the Weekend Football Preview, brought to you by Team Matchbook. We've got two brilliant returning guests offering insight and searching for value, as always. We've got 4 Premier League games to preview, as well as finding some excitement elsewhere. There's plenty happening across Europe this weekend as well. Before we begin, let me tell you that Matchbook are offering you a £10 risk-free bet if you sign up today by heading to offer.matchbook.com. You can see all the terms and conditions. And as always, we just stress that this is for over 18s only, and we ask that you be gamble aware, that you understand the risks surrounding gambling. Joining me today, Adrian Clarke, former professional footballer, current professional broadcaster. Adrian, thank you very much for joining us.
That's all right. No, absolute pleasure, Ali. Yeah, great to be here.
And joining him, as always, Mark O'Hare from We Love Betting. Mark, last week you were very excited about the start of Serie A. Did it live up to its billing opening weekend?
Yeah, it did, Ali. It was absolutely fantastic. Absolute thriller in Florence between Fiorentina and Napoli. Roma involved in a 3-3 draw with Genoa as well. Milan flopping against Udinese. Juventus kind of doing what Juventus do, really, against Parma. So, yeah, really good start to the season. Much better than La Liga, for example, where there was very few goals last weekend, apart from Barcelona Betis.
Yeah, great start in Serie A. But we're starting in the Premier League, and with probably consensus, the biggest game of the weekend, Arsenal against Tottenham Hotspur. These games between top 6 teams seem to be coming thick and fast. I think they've pretty much spread them out. I read a stat the other day that there's only a very small amount of weekends across the whole season where we're not going to get a matchup between some of the top 6 sides. And maybe there's a risk that they lose a bit of their sheen, a bit of their excitement, but hopefully not. In this case, we've got the first North London derby of the season. Adrian Clarke, obviously an expert when it comes to Arsenal, and Mark has spoken plenty about Tottenham, a team that you've made a lot of money backing over the last few years on this podcast. Arsenal, the home side here. They're available on the Matchbook site at 2.43, with Spurs at 2.78, and the draw 3.5. Arsenal minus a quarter of a goal at 2.12. Spurs with that quarter of a goal on the Asian handicap 1.87. And over 3 goals, the goal line 1.94. The under is 1.97. So this is quite a tasty prospect because there's not that much to split them in terms of the market. Adrian, I'm going to start with you on Arsenal. They lost to Liverpool last weekend. I've seen mixed reviews on this one, some criticising the tactics of Emery, and some, I believe you even wrote about it this week, defending the style that he went with and the game plan that he went with. Run me through that debate and potentially how they might approach this, a home game against their big rival Spurs.
It's an interesting point. A lot of Arsenal fans wanted to see the big 3 up top, didn't they? Pepe, Lacazette and Aubameyang. And they wanted to see Arsenal take the fight to Liverpool. All I'll say on that is that right now, I'm just not convinced that the Gunners are quite strong enough to do that away to a team as formidable as Liverpool. And I do feel that had they gone with that approach, they would have been picked off far more often.
We've seen that happen numerous times in Arsenal away games against big teams over the last few years.
Exactly. And I think that their big weakness needed protecting by that narrow central block, the diamond in midfield. And to a large extent, I thought that they defended pretty well. They showed a lot of resilience. And let's be honest here, but for better finishing, Arsenal could easily have scored 3 goals. Torreira obviously got one. Pepe on the 1v1 should have scored. Aubameyang was slipped in by Pepe on another counter. So look, on another day, Arsenal are more clinical. They draw that game 3-3, and Unai Emery draws a lot of praise. So I think that no tactical approach was foolproof in that fixture for Arsenal, unfortunately. What will they do against Spurs? I'm pretty sure they won't do that. I think that at Emirates Stadium, Arsenal are a different animal, and they like to play not always on the front foot, because I have seen them sit back and soak up pressure, and at times they'll probably have to do that against Spurs and play on the counter, where they are devastated on the counter, Arsenal, with the 3 that they've got. But no, I think this will be different. I expect a 4-2-3-1 or a version of that, and it to be more like a typical Arsenal home game. For me, the Gunners are in great shape ahead of this game. I'm very confident. I'm not really liking what I'm seeing from Spurs, but Arsenal, despite that loss, I think that they can come into this game with confidence.
Yeah, I mean, Spurs losing at home last weekend in a sluggish display, really, that many close observers suggested was a little too frequent at home, actually, in recent times. They've won just 2 of their last 8 league matches. Mark O'Hare, talk us through the stats, the trends surrounding this game, anything that's caught your eye, especially from a punting perspective.
Yeah, well, Arsenal's record, they've won 2 of the last 10 against Spurs, both at the Emirates, which, you probably expect that figure to be a little bit higher, but the figure we'll hear quite a lot now before Sunday is the fact that Spurs have won just once in 26 trips to Arsenal in the Premier League. That was in 2010, 15 of those 26 games ending in an Arsenal win. Now, I'm not one to really dwell or care about head-to-head records, but I think in some situations you do have to give those trends a little bit more validity, especially in derby games, in meetings like this. It's often played at a frantic pace. The regularity of the match, the players, the themes, it's all very similar too. So, head-to-head records to me aren't that important, but I think coming into this game, the 2 teams, I think any psychologist will tell you that, if you keep getting reinforced these potential figures or run records, it's going to affect your mindset coming into this game. And I also think home advantage can be a little bit underrated in these big derby games as well. So in terms of that, I was looking at the prices and I thought, are Arsenal value here? I'm not sure they are, because this game was played last December. Arsenal went off at 2.94. That's almost 2-1 at home to Spurs in almost a pick-em game. They're 2.4 here. That's a sizable difference. And I think Arsenal have never been shorter against a Big Six team under Unai Emery. I actually think that's a fair reflection from the market towards Spurs more so than Arsenal, because coming into the season, Arsenal were 66 to 1 to win the title. Spurs were 16-1. And now we've got kind of Arsenal as, if you're looking at those odds in kind of isolation, we're basically saying Spurs are only very slightly better than Arsenal. If this game was played at a neutral venue, it could be very much nearly a pick-em, which I'm not sure I completely agree with, despite all the evidence we've seen. I completely agree with everything Adrian said in terms of the tactics, the approach. But for Arsenal, for me, in the games before that Liverpool match, weren't that impressive against Newcastle or Burnley. They lost all the performance data metrics against Burnley at home, which is unheard of, really. There obviously were positives against Liverpool, but they've only won 6 of the last 15 against Big Six teams over the last 3 seasons at home, which is a 40% win ratio, which equates to about a 2.5 shot. So, they're 2.4 here. So already there's reasons to sort of look away. I guess the big deciding factor for me is Spurs' record at Big Six teams, Spurs' record at Arsenal as well. They comfortably lost the match at City despite the scoreline. Pochettino's record in terms of keeping clean sheets and keeping things tight away from home against the big teams is pretty poor too. We were quite bullish about them last weekend, but I think that's more probably negative towards Newcastle than it was positive towards Spurs. And there's also kind of been that sort of lethargy about their season from last season hanging over. They're weaker at fullback. They've got issues there this week as well with Kyle Walker-Peters possibly out as well. The issues about Eriksson and Vertonghen, will they even be there by Sunday? We still don't know about that. So I'm also not interested in quotes about Spurs. So, I'm being really indecisive in this match. But I think normally we look at Arsenal Spurs in these matches and we think goals, goals, goals. I looked at that. It was around 1.8 for over 2.75 goals on Wednesday morning. Now on Thursday afternoon, that price is long gone. And interesting, I look back on head-to-head trends as well. Only 3 of the last 12 have gone over 2.5 goals. If you go back further, 4 of the last 16 have gone over 3.5 goals. So immediately I started looking towards kind of back in the unders, because the unders is where the value is now, under 3.25 goals at 1.75. Well, you'll make money if there's 1 to 3 goals. 4 goals or more will see you lose your stake. But to be honest, I'm just feeling completely in the middle now here. I can't really find any real value, anything I really want to be behind. And I just think team news is absolutely essential here, because if Arsenal do line up with the front 3, which Emery has hinted at in his press conference this week, that could be a possibility, then I definitely will be game with goals. But right now, there's no reason to get involved at all.
Can you test Spurs? That's all I'll say, Ali, here on this game. I think they're winless in 7 games on the road. I think they've drawn 1, lost 6 of their last 7 away games in the Premier League. So they're not great travellers at the moment. What I see with my eyes is a team that's not necessarily happy or fluent at the moment. I don't see a defence that's anywhere near as solid as it has been under Pochettino. And I look at Arsenal, I look at that midfield, which is young, more vibrant. I look at the forward line, which has been pepped up by Pepe. And I think Arsenal can cut loose here. I'm confident.
Okay. What about a prediction from you, Adrian?
Home win. I think I made that pretty clear. No,
Home win.
very hard to call. Clearly, these fixtures, the Spurs are more than capable. But I'd go both teams to score and Arsenal to win this one, probably 2 or 3-1.
Okay, and Mark, we ask you for value, and I think you've actually provided us with plenty of value in telling us that you're not sure there is any value currently in the market. So spot on. Thank you guys for the breakdown of that game. The second game we're going to talk about is Everton against Wolves. And this is, on paper, quite a tasty-looking fixture between two of the country's better teams outside of the top 6. Everton, you can get at 2.26, the home team, and Wolves at 3.64, with the draw at 3.14. Handicaps, Everton minus a quarter of a goal, 1.91, and Wolves plus a quarter of a goal, 2.04. Over 2.25 goals is available at 2.02, and under 2.25 goals at 1.89. So again, the bookies expecting it to be relatively close, but Everton are favourites. They were made to work for a Carabao Cup win in midweek against Lincoln with, I reckon, half of a first team, 4-2 in the end, but made to work for it certainly, going behind once early on and then getting pegged back at 2-1 and then scoring 2 late goals. Wolves are playing later tonight on Thursday in the Europa League. We think that they'll play a rotated team, but how much is there to rotate with Nuno's thin squad? So it's an interesting game. And Adrian, I'd like to know your thoughts on this one. What are you expecting here based on what we've seen from these two teams so far and their midweek exploits?
Yeah, I think I'm expecting a tight game, and not a whole load of goals. I was looking at some stats earlier. I was writing a piece on Wolves, and they've only created what Opta would describe as one big chance this season. Now that's in 3 Premier League games. That's the worst record of anyone. So there's definitely an edge, a spark missing from Wolves inside the final third at the moment. I think Doherty's he's having a downturn. That's made a difference there in terms of their creativity. So they need to buck their ideas up a touch. I would say that they've had hard fixtures to this point to sort of balance that out. Everton, it's hard to know what to make of Everton so far. I'm not on the Blues bandwagon. I have to say, when people were talking them up ahead of the season, saying it's their time to break into the top 6, I was struggling to see where the justification for that was, and nothing's changed my mind based on what they've produced so far. So for me, Wolves are a marginally better team, and I would back them to go to Goodison Park and either get a point or a narrow victory. Just as a little point aside, Nuno has, obviously it's a bit of a derby with Nuno against Silva. He's always beaten him. Nuno Espirito Santo, 3 meetings, 3 wins. So I wonder, has he got the Indian sign over Silva? The records would suggest he has.
Interesting. Both teams have had a sort of strange start to the season. Everton drawing with Palace, beating Watford, losing against Villa. Wolves, as you mentioned, Adrian, harder fixtures, you'd say. That draw with Leicester, draw with United, draw with Burnley. So both teams yet to truly get going. Mark, is there a betting angle here? Is there value in the markets where there may not have been obvious value in the Arsenal Spurs game?
There was. It's eking out very quickly. It's not an exciting bet, but it's basically to do what Adrian's saying and back the tight game, take the unders under 2.25 goals. It's just north of 1.7, I think, at the moment. I think backing Everton at home and opposing them away has been quite a profitable formula under Marco Silva. But, he was moaning about Aston Villa putting 9 men in and around the box last weekend when Everton were trying to get back into the game. But what's he expected to do? It's just kind of mindless, really. He needs to look at his own players, Andre Gomez, Sigurdsson, Richarlison, all failed to turn up, really. And then he started creating opportunities when Iwobi and Moises Kean came on. So they hit the post. Walcott missed a sitter as well. But I think the interesting thing for me with Everton is coming into the season, and since the season started, they're really struggling in that final third. So I do expect some changes. Their last 7 games, including pre-season friendlies, have ended 0-0, 1-0, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, 1-0, and 2-0. That's including pre-season friendlies, which is unheard of to get that many goalless draws, really. Their 3 Premier League games have featured just 3 goals. And obviously their defence is being lauded.
Boring toffees, Mark. Boring.
It is. And I don't think it's getting kind of picked up on as much as it probably should have, really. I know their defence is getting plenty of credit for their work this year, but The home form is strong. They've won 18 of 25 home games against non-Big Six teams when they scored a goal. The question mark is, can they score here? Because Wolves are pretty tight. If you look back to February, the two teams played each other. Everton went off at 2.74. They're 2.26 here. If you take into Wolves' extra workload, the extra schedule, this will be their 6th game in 18 days. I still think that's quite a big goal to make up. And Wolves aren't just a bad team overnight because they've had to play extra games. I know they were laboured and jaded last week against Burnley, but having to play United on Monday, Torino on Thursday, away in Italy, and then Burnley again on Sunday, that's tough. This week the schedule is much kinder. They're at home to Torino on Thursday, and Merseyside isn't too far away either. So I was looking towards a pro-Wolves angle, but I think I'd rather kind of sit back, watch this game, just see how it unfolds really, because I think Wolves will be happy to do that themselves. They did it at Leicester, sat back, ceded possession, preserved energy, tried to frustrate and counter. So I can see something similar happening here. I think 6 of the 6 games combined of these two teams have all gone unders. Half of them have featured 1 goal or fewer as well. So I think that the bet kind of tallies nicely with both sides' strengths and weaknesses too. So yeah, definitely post goals in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps a cagey game decided by a moment of brilliance, a set piece, something similar. Adrian, sounded like you were more or less on side with that as a conclusion to this one.
It is, yeah. I don't think there'll be many goals in the game. A low-scoring draw, but I think there's a lot of value in a low-scoring draw. But I'd actually side with Wolves to maybe nick it. I like Jota and Jimenez, and I think that their mobility and movement will really trouble Mina and Keane in the game. So I can see them nicking it, maybe 1-0.
All right, let's talk about Southampton against Man United. Saints 3.92 in this game. Man United 2.14. And the draw 3.36. With Southampton getting half a goal on the handicap, they are available at 1.86, and United minus half a goal at 2.12. Over 2.5 goals, 1.94, and the under 2.5 goals, 1.89. With Saints, Mark, it felt like there was a lot of positivity in pre-season with Hasenhüttl getting a pre-season under his belt and some exciting summer signings. What do you make of them so far?
I think they've been okay. I think results could have easily been better because their play has certainly deserved it. Their process has been reasonably strong. It's not been fantastic, but I quite liked Hasenhüttl coming out last week and criticising the performance in that win at Brighton, where they played 10 men for over an hour. Didn't really dominate the match massively, but they got the result, which is what he will say is all that matters and what supporters will look to as well. Because on the opening day they went to Burnley and a windswept Turf Moor, lost the match 3-0, which was never a 3-0 game. It was more a 0-0 game, really. And, against Liverpool, then they created the better opportunities as well. Didn't get anything from that game either. So, I think this is a really interesting game. Compared to the two we talked about, this is one I'm really looking forward to. I think from Southampton's perspective, they should really be targeting this game for a potential, giving United a bit of a bloody nose, really. Hasenhüttl came in December, as did Solskjaer. He's averaged 1.27 points per game. Solskjaer 1.83. If you extrapolate those points per game figures over a full season, you're effectively looking at a mid-table team facing probably a 7th place team as well. So, which I think is what we've got here, really. And the odds certainly suggest that as well. When United came here last December under Mourinho, they went off at odds-on favourites. Hughes was still here at Southampton at the time. So I think the two teams are completely different animals coming into this match. I think Saints are definitely stronger. And if you look at their record against the Big Six teams under Hasenhüttl, they certainly give these teams a go. They might have they've won 2, drawn 1, lost 5. They've won 2, drawn 0, lost 3 at home. The defeats coming against Liverpool and City at home. So the goals have been a common feature. Those 6 of the 8 games went over 2.5. 6 of the 8 saw both teams score. They've conceded at least twice in 6 of those 8 as well. And at home, 5 out of 5 overs, 5 out of 5 BTTS as well. So Saints have actually scored in the last 15 Premier League home games. United have kept 1 clean sheet in 14. That was against Chelsea in the opening day when we know they were pretty fortuitous to do so as well. So for me, it's all pointing towards goals. I really wanted to get with Southampton, but I think the odds are probably around fair. They basically reflect everything I've kind of tallied up here. So goals are the way to go for me. United are creating chances. They're averaging over 2 expected goals per game so far, but that defensive process still isn't in place yet. Overs has landed in 10 of 13 Saints home games under Ralph. 12 saw BTTS as well. And United, it's over 2.5 goals in 13 of 18 against non-Big Six teams under Solskjaer. They're not going to come here to defend. They're going to try and attack. And I think there's question marks over both defences, so why not back goals?
Adrian, United obviously losing at home to Palace last week. They are one of 10 out of 20 teams on 4 points, which seems a fairly bizarre wrinkle early on in this Premier League season. In terms of their attacking intent, which Mark touched on there, I've seen some suggestions that early on we're seeing a real over-reliance on one man, on Paul Pogba, to create chances and to drive them forward from midfield to get the ball to their front men. Is that something you've noticed? Is that something that concerns you with this United side?
Yeah, I've noticed it. I mean, you'd be crazy not to have spotted that Pogba has been in good form. He's been the one making things happen. And when he's in the mood, United are a better team, aren't they? No question. They're very different to look at, aren't they, now? With no big man up top, no Lukaku, the Alexis factor's gone. It's all about speed, isn't it, with Rashford, Martial and Daniel James. So with that in mind, I think Southampton, with their high press, are maybe a little bit more vulnerable than they might have been in previous meetings against Manchester United. So we know Hasenhüttl loves them to get in the face of the opposition. They're just going to have to be very careful not to get picked off. We saw Liverpool do that a few times against them in the last home game. So that's my worry. I'd also worry with the Saints. They've got Djenepo's out, and I think Redmond is out as well, and he's a guy that makes them tick. That said, I still think they can nick a draw here, Southampton. As Mark pointed out, they always seem to score at home. United don't tend to get many clean sheets. So yeah, I think looking at Southampton on the 1-goal handicap is a market that I think will attract a lot of interest. I can't, unfortunately, based on what I've seen so far, with the reliance on Pogba, with the creaks at the back, I can't have that much confidence in United going there and producing a professional away win.
Yeah, still a bit more for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to do to win over the Matchbook Weekend Football podcast pundits. And it sounded pretty much that our angle, Mark just confirmed this for me, was goals in this game. Are you taking the over 2.5 line at 1.94 currently on site, or were you going for a bit more of a shorter option? Because I know that you're a very what's the right word here? I've got to choose my words perfectly. Conservative punter.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. No, over 2.5 goals. Close to 1.95, I think, is a fantastic price. I think if this game was potentially played in March, that price would be a lot shorter than it is right now. I think just the early season factor is giving us a bit of a generous price here. Okay,
let's talk about Burnley and Liverpool. Burnley at Turf Moor in this game, 10.4 on site. On the Matchbook site, Liverpool 1.35 and the draw 5.4. Burnley given 1.5 goals you can get at 1.89, and Liverpool minus 1.5 goals at 2.06. Over 3 goals available at just over even money, 2.05, and the under 3 goals at 1.87. Look, it's 12 successive league wins for Liverpool now. Burnley having had a very solid start to the season with tricky fixtures, beating Southampton, losing to Arsenal, drawing with Wolves. Adrian, is there any chance that Burnley could be the team to stop Liverpool making it 13 wins in a row?
Yeah, unlucky 13. Do you know what? I think that there is a possibility. It's hard to back against Liverpool given the form that they're in, but there are creaks. I don't think defensively they've been super secure so far this term. Matip's playing well. Van Dijk not quite as well, but in general, I think that they're leaking more chances. Obviously, the Adrian factor has to be taken into account. And when I think about Burnley, and I was at the game at Emirates that Mark was talking about earlier, and Burnley did cause a lot of problems for Arsenal when they chuck balls into the box. And I just think if they can do that, if they can get high enough up the pitch to do that against Liverpool with Adrian, they've got a sniff here because Barnes is playing ever so well, and there's a real fight about them. They're much better right now, Burnley, than they were at the start of last season when they were involved in the Europa League action. So no, I think Burnley are in a good position to cause an upset. But whether they will or not, blimey, you're not going to get me to back Burnley. I don't think. I'm not that brave. But let's see if they have a squeak at the price.
Let's see if Mark O'Hare will. Have we got a selection in this game that's pro Burnley, or is it pro goals, or is it pro Liverpool?
It's a kind of, well, there's two different strands I like here, because when you got Liverpool at 1.4 every week, it's very difficult to find solid angles where there's value. Excuse me. So Liverpool to win and over 2.5 goals will be around 1.95. Now that's definitely a bet for this match, which I do like, and we'll get excited about nearer the time. But I definitely think there's potential to get with Burnley with a plus 1.75 handicap here. Now Liverpool's record is, you've talked about it already, but they've won 13 of 15 unbeaten games at non-Big Six teams away from home since the start of last season. They've actually kept a clean sheet in 9 of those games too, but as Adrian sort of suggests, they've not looked their best at the back. They're giving up 1.57 expected goals per game on average across those first 3 games, which is a big leap from 0.9 last year. Adrian, obviously, between the sticks makes things a little bit tougher as well. They gave up quite a few opportunities, as we talked about in the first half against Arsenal. And from a Burnley perspective, excuse me, they could have easily taken 3 points against Wolves last weekend. They had the better of that match, 97th-minute penalty. Against Arsenal, they could have taken something as well. And Sean Dyche has actually said, quite consistently now, his team, there's a really good energy about his team, which they lacked at this time last season because of those qualifiers. Now, I think it's quite interesting to note that Burnley have scored in all but 4 of their last 24 Premier League games. Of course, City and Liverpool, a few problems as well. They lost 4-2 and 3-1 to Liverpool last season. And since promotion, they have lost 9 of 12 against those big 2, but they scored in 9 of those games as well, including 5 of 6 at Turf Moor as well. And Guardiola famously said last year that visiting Turf Moor was like a trip to the dentist. So you're not going to have it easy, are they, Liverpool? So I do think Burnley can at least contribute. I think the kind of theory is that games involving Burnley are always low scoring. That's definitely not the case. There's definitely plenty of goals if you look for them in the right places, and I especially think their games against the big teams are full of goals too. And I just think it's difficult to really oppose Liverpool with a lot of heart, really. So for me, the bet for this one is Liverpool to win and over 2.5 goals. But I wouldn't put anyone off backing Burnley with a plus 1.75 start on the handicap, where you're only losing half your stake if Liverpool win by exactly 2 goals.
Yeah, Ali, the stat that caught my eye was, and I don't really see this, Burnley have scored every single time they've played against Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, which it amazed me. And I looked it up, as you have to do, because I don't believe every stat I'm told. And it's true, they always score. I think it's been 6 meetings since he came to the club, and they've scored at least 1 every single time. So there's something about their style that Liverpool don't love. So I'm backing them to make it 7, but I don't think they'll win the game.
All right, okay, there we go. Well, let's look at some other business now. Mark, you are a fan of both European leagues and the Football League. So at the end of each podcast, we do like to hear from you to see if there's anything you want to tell us, any value you need to let us know about. And this weekend across Europe, you've got the Old Firm Derby, the Rome Derby, Juve and Napoli as well. But from looking at your blog on insights.matchbook.com, which is the Matchbook blog where you contribute and many other shrewd writers and punters, you're actually taking us to Scandinavia. I think this might be the first time that you've done this.
Yeah, I think so on the podcast for sure. I think there's 2 angles which I really like. The game in Norway especially. The Norwegian season's been really interesting this season because Bodo Glimt are leading the way, 2 points clear at the top of the table. They've never won the title. Traditional heavyweights, Rosenborg, started disastrously there. They've probably left it too late. So it's up to Molde, really, who the bookies are rating 2-1 on to win the title. With 9 or 10 games to play, they're 2 points behind. They're coming into the weekend away from home against Mondalen. They've still got the Europa League qualifier to play on Thursday night, so there's potential fatigue issues there. But they've only lost 3 games this season. They've got quite a manageable schedule to finish the season too. There are question marks about their defence, about the conditioning too. They play a very attacking style. They've scored at least 2 goals in 15 of 19 league games, only kept 7 clean sheets. And they've actually conceded 2 goals or more in a third of their games as well, which is quite surprising for a team chasing the title. Overs has been a regular winner, almost 70% of their games as well. But yeah, I just think there's real potential for goals in this game because their hosts, Mondalen, they're not exactly a big team in Norway. They've dipped between the top 2 tiers quite regularly, battling against the drop again this season, only won 4 times as well. The defence is their big problem, but they score goals. They've scored in 15 of 19 matches this season, including all 9 at home as well. 7 of their 9 games at home have seen BTTS. And their game against Bodo, who are top of the table, ended 5-4. So Mulder are free scoring and conceded quite a few goals as well. The team at home are struggling against relegation, need a result to keep the season alive, really. So I think overs is definitely the way to play this. It's landed in 10 of 11 away games for Mulder at the bottom 6 clubs. I just want to be with goals, really. I think over 2.75 goals is around 1.8 or just shy of it. So, I think that's a great bet to have.
Happy days. Well, good stuff. If you want to check out a second Scandinavian selection, Mark has written a piece on insights.matchbook.com. You can go and find out all about GIF Sundsvall against IFK Gothenburg, which he's also written about. But that's all from us. We've been through 4 Premier League games. We've got a bit of Norwegian action from Mark O'Hare. And all that's left, guys, is for me to ask you to talk me through your best bet of the weekend. So starting with you, Mark, what's number 1 for you ahead of the weekend?
I really like the price on Southampton v Man United, over 2.5 goals. As I said, I think this price would be a lot shorter, closer to 1.7 if the season was 20 games deep. Hasenhüttl Saints, they're not going to take a step back. They like to get forward and attack teams. Their games against Big Six teams are often high scoring too, and we know what United are all about too as well. So I think you match the two together. I think the early kickoff could be quite good fun.
And Adrian, we've discussed whether Burnley could potentially take points off Liverpool for the first time in a long time. We've discussed goals in Southampton United. We thought Everton and Wolves would be a cagey affair. But looking back at the podcast, I think the most bullish you were was about Arsenal beating Spurs at home.
Yeah, I'm not always bullish about Arsenal, I promise you. I've been quite pessimistic on this podcast when they faced top 6 opposition before. But this time around, I look at the form of the two sides and I think Arsenal are in far better condition. And I believe that they will go into this game full of beans despite last weekend, and I think they'll go on and win the game. So yeah, no, I'm getting fully behind Arsenal. As a little cheeky one, back in the Championship, just I know you're a keen follower of the EFL, I've got a sneaky feeling that Swansea can get something at Ellen Road. And won't be many people tipping this up, but I think that they have the tools to at least get a draw there. So the draw or a Swansea win is one to think about there.
Well, I know Leeds are very, very short for that one, so certainly one to go and check out. Swansea have started the season fantastically well. You're correct that I do like to focus on the EFL, so apologies for Burnley fans, because I think I might have said Barnsley earlier, which shows which team name I say more regularly. Look, guys, thank you so much for your input, for your insight, and for trying to find us some value in some very tough fixtures to punt on this weekend. Thank you guys for listening to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. International break next week means we will be taking a week off. So we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with the next podcast previewing Premier League games and some elsewhere. Thank you so much for listening.